All right, here is my Game of Thrones associated to the 12 signs of the Zodiac. And I'm just going to say, before I get into this, that though while some people may go around and see what other astrologers' takes on this are, I have not really seen anything about this yet, so this is just my own take, without having any input from whatever any other memes or any other videos that may have been made. I'm kind of going in blind here and just doing my own thing. So I'm gonna start with Aries, and I'm gonna say the most. I don't know about a specific house to be associated with Aries, but I do think that Arya Stark is a very Aries quality character, and I think her brother Robb Stark, the young wolf, is a very that kind of the young upstart, and especially Robb Stark's prowess at military command. He's a very Mars character, so I think Robb Stark, strong Aries, and Arya Stark, strong Aries, and I also want to put Oberyn Martell. There's something about him I feel which is like the Aries Libra polarity. I'll get into that later, but I think there's a definite cardinal Aries Libra thing with Oberyn Martell, but maybe less of just a straight up Mars influence. And so second, we're going on to Taurus. For Taurus, um, the hands down the most Taurus character in Game of Thrones is the guy who bakes the bread, the baker character whose name I can't remember right now, um, because the whole baking thing is very Taurus. Then I would also say this guy Gendry, who is the blacksmith, is also. I don't know if this guy just gives me Taurus vibes. He seems like a very Taurus kind of guy. And then in terms of a house or family, um, I think maybe for like the dark side of Taurus, kind of feel like Stannis Baratheon would probably be like the evil Taurus or the Taurus Scorpio axis. Or also, I think that maybe not to be, like I think the Baratheon family in general kind of gives me a Taurus vibe, and that Gendry Baratheon, who I said is just there's a very Taurus quality about him. He is the bastard son of Robert Baratheon, so some recurring Taurus archetype with the Baratheons, I would make the argument. Um, okay, moving on to Gemini. The most obvious Gemini archetype that I can see in Game of Thrones is this guy, the two brothers, Sandor and Gregor Clegane, or the Hound and the Mountain, if I'm getting it right. But though that is a basic, it's kind of almost like the Cain and Abel myth of the evil brother who turns on the other one, and it kind of climaxes in the end. In the end, they have the epic battle between the brothers, and if it's also if you're the kind of person who's grown up, I grew up with a sister, but I observed a pattern sometimes with male siblings that there can be a huge maliciousness with male siblings. That is kind of indicative of this sort of maybe a Mars and Gemini thing. I'm making this with Mars retrograde in Gemini, and that I feel that Mars retrograde Gemini really goes with the Sandor and Gregor Clegane thing. The other strong Gemini that I can sense is that the particular character of Lord Davos Seaworth. This guy just screams Gemini to me. There's something about the way this guy can play for different teams. He's a kind of everyman. He's not from a noble family, but he knows how to play his cards, but he's not doing it in a sneaky way, but he's a good negotiator. He's good with making bargains. He's good with kind of playing different he's like the ultimate kind of Mercury Gemini kind of dude. Like this that Davos Seaworth. And then I also think that maybe there might be some other mutable characteristics going on. Like if you imagine this guy with a chart, like I could see him having like Gemini and Pisces really strong, maybe. I don't know. That's my take on Davos, anyways. So next we've got Cancer, and I'm basically just giving Cancer to the Veil, Lisa Aaron, and the Aaron family in general. Uh, the Tyrell family, I also feel, is a strong kind of maternal, feminine. There's something, the lunar archetype is kind of like seen as the feminine luminary, and there's something about the Tyrell family that gives me this sort of like they're high, they're high in this position, but they're kind of their matriarchal power is more defined. And I see that as well with the Vale and the Aaron family. Sometimes there's kind of pushed to this where they're nurturing their son too much. It's kind of disturbing. There's also, I think, Gilly, the wildling, is kind of a Cancer kind of archetype. As we move on to Leo, the Lannisters are the most obvious Leo archetype. The lion and the red and the gold is all hitting the Leo notes very strongly. Um, I don't know if I really need to go into more detail with that. I think there's other. I think Leo also shows up though in some characters. Like I think some of the wildlings are actually very Leo, and there's different sides of Leo. There's a Leo that can be royalty and nobility, and then there's Leo which can be the wildling Leo. And I think that contrast. I don't know. I don't know if I get her pronunciation of her name right, but Jon Snow's wildling girlfriend Ygritte, is that her name? I would say she's probably a Leo. Or there various wildling characters that come off. Yeah, if I would basically give her a Leo as an individual character, a Leo quality. Um, as we move on to whatever, I'm putting Brienne of Tarth as being a very Virgo character. Um, who's that? Oh my god, there's this guy who's a mercenary. I can't remember his name. This guy, I'm throwing him to Virgo. This guy's a hardcore Virgo character. Samwell, John's friend, I would consider him to be kind of a Virgo character, especially when he becomes a kind of a librarian, kind of academic guy near the end of it. He seems like his Virgo qualities are coming out even stronger. Um, okay, and then for Libra, I'm basically giving Libra to Dorn and House Martell. Um, I have some other notes here that I'm not quite sure if this is. There's Melisandre and Miss Missandei. Who's Miss Missandei? I can't even remember. I've made this note here for Miss Missandei, and I can't even remember who she is right now. I was also thinking the Unsullied, right? Maybe Miss Missandei is the person. Yeah, there's something about those people. I think the Unsullied is a little bit of a Libra. It's kind of like the Athena archetype, right? Of being kind of like your warriors, but you're kind of made a kind of your. I mean, it's kind of there's sort of like the taking the pledge of alliance or something. I don't. Okay, I'm kind of getting lost, but I think to go back to Dorn, there's something about the sophistication of Dorn and the kind of the quality of being well known for a nice Dornish wine. Right? There's the quality. Dorn is first introduced in the show as being like the high quality wine and having a certain appreciation of good taste and class. But they also have it's kind of balanced because they also have a kind of their own, dangerous, volatile, militaristic kind of quality in their own style as well, right? So there's kind of like this the balancing of light and dark. I feel there's a kind of that kind of balance and an aesthetic kind of quality with Dorn, and I think that there's certain character that can kind of go in. It kind of leans towards a Scorpio direction, especially. I think that when you get into the characters like the Dornish sand snakes, it's kind of the more of the Scorpio side of Libra. When Libra starts to kind of lean into Scorpio, then you kind of come out in the Scorpio end of it with the Dornish sand snakes. Um, and so we kind of transition into talking about Scorpio here, and I think in some way, I think the Targaryens in general are very Scorpio. These people who are, especially in the context of Daenerys Targaryen being a kind of like the survivor, like the last survivor of this family that's been all but wiped out, and the Scorpion as being the kind of like the tenacious little survivor that keeps going, right? That's a very Scorpio quality that I think you can associate with the Targaryen, and I would argue that maybe when they're in power, a different archetype is present, but the Targaryens as survivors is kind of a Scorpio thing. And maybe the less savory side of Scorpio could be seen in people like Peter Baelish or Ramsay Snow, Ramsay Bolton, the kind of the lowest of the low bastards of the story. Those guys are probably the medieval. If you look into medieval ancient astrology, they're not kind to Scorpios, and they're probably just these awful sons of bitches are probably the Scorpios of the story, I would say. And then that brings us to the Sagittarius, which it's not. This one's actually really easy. The Sagittarius are obviously the Dothraki, because what are the most centaur-like characters except for the Attila the Hun barbarian horse riders? And so basically the Dothraki and whatever Jason Momoa and the Khal Drogo and all that. I'm giving it all to Sagittarius. And I also think that another that's kind of like the other side of Sagittarius is maybe something like Melisandre, right? Like that maybe the Dothraki are kind of more of the like barbarian animal side of Sagittarius, but there's like Melisandre represents a kind of like the devotional kind of aiming for some kind of higher, the Lord of Light, protect us kind of stuff. That there's the devotional priest kind of side of Sagittarius. That's the part of that you don't really see as much in the Dothraki that you see in Melisandre, the kind of the priestly side of it, or the whatever you want to say about her exactly. I think she fits Sag pretty well. Then when you go on to Capricorn, I did say Robb Stark was like Aries, but I could see Robb Stark as having like a combo of Aries and Capricorn placements. Or that the way that Mars exalts in Capricorn is another example of a strong Mars influence. So that makes me think of Robb Stark, but when I think about Capricorn, I think the Saturn archetype, and then I'm starting to think actually you can kind of constellate Ned Stark as a good Capricorn character, and also if you kind of just consider the Stark family in general, and that maybe even Sansa Stark could be like a female Capricorn, or like as an less for specific characters, but like Ned Stark and the Starks in general, the Winterfell, because Winterfell is winter, right? And what's Capricorn but the first one to winter? So it's very obvious to me that the Starks just get Winterfell, and that's an easy one. The next Saturn sign is Aquarius, and Jon Snow, I feel like, is a great Aquarius character. The whole thing about going to the Night's Watch, taking a pledge where you're committing yourself to take an oath of duty to the realm, and you're not marrying, and you're not your own personal life and your personal allegiances and alliances have to be cast aside, and you're even working alongside your enemies and what do you even where is this that you're defending a massive wall, when the Saturn archetype is there as the wall and the defense of the wall and maintaining the boundary and staying ever vigilant and having that duty. This is all very, very Aquarius. And then I also have to remind you that like there's something about Aquarius. There's this weird stuff when you get into this Aquarius stuff about like Uranus and Saturn, and like whether or not Uranus is a modern ruler. I don't. But here's the thing though. Saturn castrated Uranus, and there's something about whether this is at all even applicable to astrology and the archetypes. But rather than getting too deep into that, Varys, the castrated eunuch character, is also, I would say, the other side of When Jon Snow's off getting lucky with the wildlings, Varys is the other side of the Aquarius archetype that he's another loyal, dutiful servant in some sense, but maybe in another, there's what questionable whether how loyal he is. Who is he? But he's sure in his principles. In a sense, he's working to the same goal as Jon Snow. Is that he's trying to look out for the good of the realm. So in a way, Varys is actually a good guy, but he's not taking sides with any. You don't know if you're a king. You don't really know if he's on your side or not. You don't know if he's trustworthy. But he ultimately wants to look out for the good of all, right? So that I think there's something about that quality that comes out that's very Aquarius. Which brings me to number 12, the very last one here, Pisces, and could you see it coming? This is the most obvious one. I think the Greyjoys just take Pisces hands down. Pisces are basically a bunch of rascally pirates in some way that are kind of you don't really know what the mutable quality of the Greyjoys really comes out, because they're the kind of people that will make an alliance, and then you don't know if they're going to hold their alliance or they're going to have internal conflicts, or if or somebody's going to what direction's going to happen, or one pirate fleet's going to attack the other, or this guy is just fucking around for no good reason, and it's there's something that's very Pisces about it. Is all I can say. A school of fishes, and they're all kind of swimming in chaotic ways, and it's kind of, and they seem, in one way they seem that they're kind of they're not very powerful. For a lot of the show, the Greyjoys are kind of victimized and picked on, and they're not really looking very strong. But then at the end of this, when it comes to the fucking naval suites, those Greyjoys are kicking ass, but they're not very reliable. That unreliability is very Pisces. So I love. There's some way that I love. I love this. What is it? The whole thing about the Greyjoys at the end of the series. That rascally pirate guy. I don't know if I'm gonna get his name right or if I remember his name, but you know what I'm talking about, right? That guy in particular seems like the most ultimate Neptune, Pisces, Jupiter, or when you put all that thick. This guy probably has a Pisces stellium, and he's probably just the worst Pisces you can imagine. So this is my 12 signs of Game of Thrones. Thank you for watching.